Should Britain's arms sales to Saudi be stopped? In France, two human rights groups have campaigned for a halt to French arms sales to Saudi Arabia and to the United Arab Emirates. And they're taking their case to France's highest legal authority, arguing that France is breaking international law by providing weapons for Saudi-led aggression against Yemen and committing war crimes there too. The war has been running since 2015, with a blockade on Yemeni ports, airports and border crossings adding to the suffering. Aparat Ltd and Acer, which specialise in armament issues, gave French Prime Minister Edouard Philippe a 2-month ultimatum in March to suspend licences for arms sales to the Persian Gulf states, where France has sold artillery guns, ammunition, sniper rifles and armoured vehicles. The groups are presenting a legal challenge to the Conseil d'État, France's highest legal authority, which advises the government on legislative matters and arbitrates on public policy issues. As British weapons sales to Saudi Arabia face the prospect of being ruled unlawful, UNICEF has claimed thousands of children have been killed during the conflict. In the light of this civilian suffering, judges have granted the Campaign Against the Arms Trade permission to appeal a ruling by the High Court in July which allowed the UK to continue granting export licences. Meanwhile, allegations that British weapons have been used to kill civilians in Yemen continue. How does Britain feel about selling weapons to a country with a questionable human rights record? And why has the international community not taken action over Saudi's military interventions in Yemen? Simple questions with important answers. In fact, Saudi Arabia has been bombing Yemen and imposing a crippling blockade, causing hunger and famine to millions and leaving an estimated 600,000 civilians dead and injured. Does the British public know of the UK's role in this alleged genocide? We asked them.
I'm not really sure that they are involved. I'm not sure if there's any military involvement at all, to be honest. I'm ignorant on that.
We're selling weapons.
Ah, right. Well, that does make a difference. If the MOD's involved, then yes, that's a cause for concern, obviously.
Well, I think most of the governments and heads of the ruling countries that rule the country, they have more powers. So I do think, yes, the UK may have a say in it, because, you know, UK is ruled by the topmost government, and also for them to make big decisions, they have to liaise with other countries as well. So I do think so.
I think we've been selling arms to the Saudis, haven't we? I'm sorry to say. But they've got the money and we need the jobs, so there's realpolitik for you.
No, it's pretty down low on, I think, the UK's agenda, unless they're keeping it quiet. But I think it might have something to do with the fact that Saudi Arabia and the business opportunities that are there, I think that might have something, which is wrong, which might have something to do with it. The fact that it's not as big a deal out here, or made to be a bigger deal out here.
Yes, I am. I don't know that you might call it a genocide, but I know that there's collateral damage from bombing, and I know that the weapons that Saudi Arabia uses is purchased from British, private companies that sell weapons, and authorised by the British government, obviously. I know that.
No, I'm not aware of our role. I know that politicians will be aware of it, but they don't liaise with the general public about that, I'm assuming. So no.
Yeah, we sell arms to Saudi Arabia, which then are used in the Yemen.
No, I'm not at all aware. No.
I am aware in the sense that there were statements by senior UK officials, including Lord Howe, who in July 2015 told the Houses of Parliament, the House of Lords, that the UK was assisting in 3 areas, in intelligence, in intelligence information, and This is number one. And then in supplying guided bombs and missiles, and also providing experts in those fields to the Saudis. So these were on record, and this just shows that the Saudis were there.
Well, of course I'm aware, but then I think everybody is aware. The UK has been helping the Saudi coalition. It's part of the Saudi coalition, so of course they are aware of what is happening. They are providing technical support, and they're providing intelligence as well. And it's not a secret. It's well known. It has been well documented. Politicians are not even hiding from it. What they're trying to do, however, is deflect the blame, because of course, if you're part of a military coalition against a certain country and abuses are being committed, then you are responsible, by association. And I think that the problem that we have is that the UK keep trying to deflect blame onto Saudi Arabia or blaming mistakes, and not really taking into account the fact that the Saudi are acting upon the intelligence that the UK is providing, and they're using the weapon that the UK is quite keen on selling them. So of course there is responsibility here, but it's just a matter of how much we want to hold them responsible and how far we're willing to go to do that.
Britain has sold over £3 billion worth of arms to Saudi Arabia, despite its controversial human rights record. What does the British public think of this?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, the UK needs to be very careful about selling arms to various regimes and countries. I think this is a big issue that's never really been looked at properly.
I don't think that's really right, but then who am I to say it's not right? Because if they're going to be selling those weapons, and obviously then there's going to be lives that will be taken, and people's lives are at risk. So I don't really agree with that.
I think it's absolutely disgraceful. And, we hear a lot of blather from the government about human rights and all the rest of it. But when it's down to hard cash, that's what they do. And if there was a party who didn't do that, I'd jolly well vote for them. I've got no idea what Labour's record on this, I have to say.
It's wrong. It's basically wrong. And I think the government are looking at the financial issues over the humanitarian issues, which again is wrong.
Well, it's shocking. I mean, it's such double standards, where they go and complain to Russia, and rightly so, for dropping chemical weapons in cahoots with Syria. Was really a Syrian chemical weapons attack. They tried to cover up and they exposed it and said, no, you're going to learn your lesson and we're going to bomb your airfields or whatever, your chemical weapons factory. That's such double standards.
I think it's bad. I think it's really bad. But the problem is that they don't give us enough information to be able to produce our own thoughts, but that's politicians for you.
We shouldn't be selling arms to Saudi Arabia if that's where they're going to end up using them.
I think that's pretty disgusting, to be honest. I wasn't even aware that was an issue.
If you ask the UK government, they will always tell you that the Saudis are aware of our commitment to human rights and also the rule of law, the law that controls and regulates the war issues. However, in reality, I think only lip service is given to the human rights issues in these circumstances, and that the economic and political imperatives are given priority in the decision by the ministers whether to supply the Saudis with arms or not. So at this moment of time, the British have repeatedly said that they will continue their old policy that started in 2015, and they have said nothing about stopping them.
I think it's despicable. But then again, this is the era of war profiteering. Britain is making billions of dollars out of those deals, and nobody really cares about, the price that the Yemeni have to pay, which is in blood. I think we have reached a stage where human life, is very much according to geography. So if you are in the West and you happen to be white, then your life is actually worth talking about, or worth something. If you're in Yemen or in Palestine, for example, nobody really cares. And this is something that is now pandemic, and people don't react. So if they don't react, of course, the government will continue to make money on the misery of poor and innocent people, because again, who cares? And who's asking question? Not many people.
How does the public here in London feel about Britain selling weapons to Saudi Arabia, which is then using those weapons to wage war in Yemen, while at the same time Britain is also providing aid to Yemen?
That doesn't really make sense because you're defeated. That's sort of defeating the purpose, isn't it? Because if you're selling the weapon or giving the weapon, but then you're still selling people, so that means they have certain targets to be met, but then they're still selling aids over there. So that doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, of course. It doesn't make any sense to be selling weapons to one side and trying to help the other side. But as long as we have a huge arms industry in this country, it's inevitable that we're going to sell arms to whoever's got the money for it, and that's always been the case and always will be.
It's giving mixed messages, and yeah, it doesn't look good on the world stage for us to do that and then to be smug about the things that we complain that other people are doing.
That also makes no sense because it's like pretending that you actually are a humanitarian when really you're not. You know, you're hiding your wickedness and your profit making because and the loss of lives because you really want to grow your economy, and that's all they're really interested in doing.
Contradicting. It's bizarre. I find that completely bizarre.
It's ludicrous, but then so much foreign policy is ludicrous. The whole situation is going to be massively worsened by Donald Trump's position by dumping the Iran deal.
I think that's a bit of a conflict of interest, really. I don't quite understand how that's come to fruition.
Well, there was a nice cartoon by the Times some 3 weeks ago that shows how the British are sending the Typhoon airplanes to Yemen with missiles, but also attaching to those missiles some support, some medical aid and so on. So yes, they are supporting. They say probably they have given up to $50 million worth of aid, or probably I think they said 120, 130 million, but also spent or got more than 3 billion worth of arms supplies to the Saudi. So I don't think this is a very clever way of putting it. You cannot just go and bomb a country and then say, I will send the doctors to repair the damage we have done to the human beings.
Okay, see, the problem is that we're under the assumption that aid is reaching Yemen or is actually being distributed in Yemen. I don't think that people understand that whenever I hear the Saudis saying we're delivering aid to Yemen or the UK or any other Western capital for that matter, where is the aid? Because people are still starving, people are still dying from, preventable diseases such as cholera, diphtheria, and a whole range of them. Where is the aid? I don't know. So I think there's a misconception here as to how much aid is reaching and reaching whom. Because, there's always the question is, certain factions such as Al-Qaeda are still operating in Yemen. Are we talking about aiding those people? Who are we talking about? Number one. Number two, you can't actually, set a forest on fire and then come up with a little water hose and say, oh, we're going to try to put it out. It doesn't work that way. You can't just think that you're going to be absolved of all blame just because you provided, a few bread and or medicine to people here and there. They're killing people. At the end of the day, they need to be held responsible for the crimes they're committing. And we're talking crime against humanity to the degree of genocide now. So we're not talking about a few collateral, deaths here and there. We're talking about mass genocide in Yemen. So I don't care how much aid they give him, to be frank with you.
The Yemeni Ministry of Human Rights reports the Saudi-led war has left 600,000 civilians dead and injured since March 2015. The United Nations says 8.4 million Yemenis face severe hunger and 22.2 million need food aid. At the same time, the UK has licensed £4.6 billion worth of arms to the Saudi regime, including aircraft, helicopters, drones, grenades, bombs and missiles. The alleged genocide against Yemenis by Saudi and by its allies began in 2015. Why hasn't the international community taken direct action to stop Saudi Arabia over the past 3 years? The public said this.
Right, well I think the answer to that is not enough people are aware of all the facts. I don't think people are fully aware of our sort of contradictory stance that we have on it, and if it was perhaps made a bit more public, there would be more of an outcry, I suspect.
They haven't stood up to Saudi Arabia because Saudi Arabia's got the money and it's got the oil, and if their oil ran dry, they'd be nothing tomorrow. But everybody pays court to them, of course they do.
I don't know. I mean, other stuff is brought to our attention which is not as bad. I don't know why that is the case. Again, I think it might come back to the fact that it's always a financial issue, and that is put above the lives of people, really, which is wrong. And I don't know what we can do to change it.
From my opinion, why do I think Inter hasn't done anything? I don't know about the international community. I know that the politicians, they lead a lot of this, but I would like to be involved as a British, from the part of the British public, to be able to vote on this sort of things, but we don't get given enough information to be able to provide any information. So I don't know why, man.
It's a mystery. It's because, I think, partly because of Saudi Arabia and their strengths with various governments, and Yemen's just not on anyone's list, and it's a shame.
I guess there hasn't been the awareness of it. Again, that's something that I wasn't aware of. So if the awareness was raised, then I imagine it would come to the front of the public, and therefore something would probably be done about it.
I don't know what you mean by the international community. The United Nations is so weak. It is very much influenced by the superpowers, especially America. And this is one thing. But also, even if it says something, it will lack the willingness to impose it, to put it in action. So at the moment, so far, unfortunately, the United Nations has not called for a ceasefire, which is shameful. You cannot keep this war going on when you hear of the enormous casualties among the civilians, yet you are saying nothing. There is a war, it won't stop. I think the war is not a solution to any problem. Wars never sort out or solve any crisis or any problem. You have to stop them, then negotiate the problems that is there.
Because I think that, well, there's many reasons, but one of the main ones is money, because the Saudi have, thrown billions of dollars at the West. They help with their weapons, so of course it makes sense. Why stop a war when you're making money out of it? Number two, I think there are geopolitical issues where Yemen is important. Yemen needs to be controlled if someone wants to control the world oil route. And so for Western capitals to have a buffer zone of sorts, in the region, in the south of the Arabian Peninsula, makes sense. Bearing in mind that they want to have more munitions against Iran, they want to have better position against Russia, it makes sense that way. And the problem is, nobody cares about the sovereignty of Yemen, nobody cares about human rights. It's all about, gaining influence, or making money. So we are stuck in a weird power equation where the Yemeni are completely forgotten. They will continue to be forgotten unless we're actually honest about the real ins and outs of this conflict. It's not a civil war. It's not a proxy war. It's a war of annihilation for power and geopolitical gains. Simple.
Human rights groups have threatened legal action against France over arms exports to Saudi and to the United Arab Emirates. Should they and the general public also apply more pressure on the UK to stop arms sales to Saudi Arabia and its allies? Here's what the public said.
It seems a bit hypocritical to be selling arms to regimes and countries that we may not necessarily be supporting in any other way. In other words, we're happy to take their money, sell product, but we don't believe in what they're using the arms for, if that makes sense.
I'd be surprised if Amnesty isn't active in that. I'm a member of Amnesty. I think they have been active against the arms trade in the past. There are certainly demonstrations at arms fairs. People turn up. It's just because there's such huge vested interests. Everybody knows that we're really on a hiding to nothing, because as long as there's so much money and jobs in this country, they'll always say, it's like getting rid of cigarettes. So somebody will say, that so many jobs are involved. You have to face up to your responsibilities sometime, but politicians will never do that while there's so much money sloshing around.
Absolutely, they need some sort of mandate and things in place for this not to happen, and for us to have a say about it. So yes, I think it's a good idea.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And if you don't, then you're kind of guilty of letting them off the hook. So yes, you've got to. It's a democracy, and if they can find themselves, innocent of the charges and allegations, and I mean all of the things I'm saying here are allegations I'm making. It's just spontaneously. I'm not sure of my facts. I hardly know the facts, so I can't really be absolutely sure, but you can only really be sure in a court of law.
Yes, definitely. I think we should do exactly what France are doing.
They can have a go at it, but the trouble is their efforts may be frustrated.
Yeah, I mean, why would you not want to put an end to a war? Absolutely.
Well, the UK NGOs have also done similar thing. The campaign against arms trade had filed a case against the British government for supplying Saudi Arabia with arms last year, but it was turned down. The High Court simply said that the UK was right in doing what it was doing. Now, they recently, in the last 2 weeks, the High Court has given CAT another chance to appeal against the original verdict. So the hope is that the High Court will listen again to the reasoning behind the cause to stop arms supply to the Saudis, and hopefully they will stop it. But I think the NGOs in UK are strong and are also calling, and they have been calling to stop the war. They have calling to stop the arms supplies. They have been demonstrating in the streets. But at the end of the day, despite what we hear about democracy, those in Whitehall are the people who make the decisions, regardless of what you or me say about what they are doing.
I'm going to say yes, we should, because we have to try. I'm not sure it's going to work out because I'm a bit cynical when it comes to, not cynical about the law, cynical about the way that it's going to be played out and how officials will try to, make things lengthier than they have to be, to try to score some political points. That's my main problem. But yes, we should. Now, that being said, I think it's down to the public to actually do more and actually be a bit more proactive. And what people need to get, it's not about trying to be, a very loud activist suddenly caring about everything. It's about caring for us and our rights. So if you don't stand for people in Yemen, because all they're asking is political self-determination, the right to actually live in peace within their own borders, they're not trying to invade anybody, then we are standing the chance of actually having someone else to come and threaten us, threaten our rights, threaten our democracies, and threaten our way of living. So if we don't stand on principle on democracy, then we're actually opening the way for other people to come and threaten us. So I think it's only natural to protect the Yemenis so that we're protecting ourselves and strengthening our rights to democracy and our democracy, by association. And I think that people need to understand that. It's not about protecting people in one corner of the world. It's about the fact that we live in a global society. We have to stand for them because we're standing for us, really.
Norway has already suspended arms exports to the United Arab Emirates. The German government has also said it would immediately stop weapons exports to anyone participating in the war in Yemen. France, the world's third biggest exporter of arms, faces legal challenges to its continued supply of arms to Saudi Arabia and the UAE.
So where does this leave Britain? Should it follow the lead of Norway and Germany? Or will the UK simply continue to sell weapons until a legal action is taken to prevent this? It could come down to law. But the simplest question of all is this: why? With so many civilians being killed in a brutal conflict between a rich state against a poor one, many claim that, in selling billions of pounds worth of arms to Saudi Arabia, Britain has also sold its moral authority.